I remember the first time I saw Chief Eduardo Pereira's home. It wasn't a mansion, but it gleamed in a way that made you feel like you were stepping into something important. The soft light of the Brazilian sun hit the polished marble floors in the entryway, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across the room in an almost deliberate way. As I walked in, the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the tang of the ocean breeze from the windows, a reminder that despite everything, we were in Brazil, where life moved with a rhythm that was both comforting and frustrating. I'm Grace Oliveira. At 21, I'm a student at the University of São Paulo. I'd grown up in the same crumbling house with my parents and 4 younger siblings, all cramped into a space that never felt like home. We made do, of course. That's what we did. But when the pressure of bills piled up and my parents' once promising jobs fell through, they had no choice but to turn to Chief for help. That was the plan, anyway. The reality, though, it's a different story. And every time I catch myself thinking about how grateful I should be, a part of me flinches. It's hard to be thankful when you feel like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, trying not to fall. I glance over at the kitchen, where I spent hours preparing his meals, hoping it would make up for the discomfort that had begun to gnaw at me. I thought it was just me overthinking. I had to. My parents trusted Chief like family. He'd always been good to us, supportive, generous in ways I couldn't even comprehend. He was the man who helped put me through school, the one who ensured that my younger siblings had food on the table. Without him, we would have lost everything. Yet there was a growing unease. It started small, the way he lingered a little too long when he handed me a glass of water, the way he seemed to memorize my movements when I walked past him. I told myself it was nothing. He was just being kind, nothing more. But the tension in his gaze was hard to ignore. Every time he smiled at me, I felt my chest tighten. I'd never been in a position like this before, living in someone else's house, relying on them to the point where I felt like I owed everything I had to him. Maybe that's what made the unease harder to shake off. I owed him. He helped my family. And if I spoke up now, if I said something about how uncomfortable I was, it would seem ungrateful. But it was more than just discomfort. It was the way his presence began to fill up every corner of the house. It was in the way his eyes would flicker to me every time we were in the same room. It was how he had begun to act, like he owned me in a way I wasn't ready to accept. But what choice did I have? My family was struggling, and I was already feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I couldn't let them down now, not when we had come so far. I had to endure. That's what they told me. Just endure. Let me tell you about my family. We don't have much, but we have each other. My parents have always worked tirelessly to give us whatever they could, even when it seemed like the world was falling apart. Dad works as a mechanic, and Mom does everything she can, from cleaning houses to selling small things at the market. They've never been wealthy, but they managed. But then came the crisis. Dad's shop shut down. Mom's cleaning business started to fade. And with 4 kids to feed, I knew my parents were drowning. That's when they turned to Chief Eduardo. And, to be honest, I didn't blame them. He wasn't just a family friend. He was like a godfather to us, a pillar of support in times of hardship. He offered us a way out. I never expected things to go this far. When I moved in with Chief, it was supposed to be temporary. A roof over my head while I finished school. A simple arrangement. He was more than capable of providing, and for a while, everything seemed normal. Safe, even. At first, I didn't mind the grandeur of his home. The high ceilings, the massive garden. It felt like a dream. No more worrying about rent. No more scrambling to pay for books. Chief took care of it all. And my parents, they were happy. They kept telling me how lucky I was, how we would never have made it without his help. The first few months were comfortable. Chief treated me like I was part of the family, like a daughter. He was kind, always asking if I needed anything, always making sure I was well taken care of. But over time, the kindness began to feel more like an obligation. His presence started to linger in ways it shouldn't have. I remember one day, after I'd just finished preparing lunch, he complimented me on how well I had cooked. but his gaze didn't leave my face. It wasn't the usual smile I'd grown accustomed to. It was something different, something darker. I didn't know what to make of it. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just being appreciative. But then there were other moments. Little things. The way he stood too close when handing me a plate. The way he casually brushed his hand against my back when passing by. It made my skin crawl. I would find myself pulling away, thinking maybe I had misunderstood him. But each time, the nagging feeling that something wasn't right got louder. The worst part, I didn't know how to speak up. I couldn't. Not when he had done so much for us. And my parents, they trusted him. He was our savior, and I was just a young woman living under his roof. What right did I have to question him? But deep down, something told me that this wasn't just generosity. It wasn't fatherly affection. It was something else entirely. I had been in the kitchen for what felt like hours. The smell of stewed beef and rice wafting up from the stove. Chief had been in the living room, watching the news as usual. The evening had been calm, too calm. At least, it was until I returned from the kitchen, carrying a tray of food. I wasn't expecting to see him like that. I should have been. Something in my gut had been telling me to stay alert, to keep my distance, but I still wasn't prepared. When I walked back into the room, the sight that greeted me hit me like a punch to the chest. Chief had already removed his trousers. He sat there on the couch, his legs spread wide, eyes fixed on me with an intensity one had never seen before. The air in the room thickened instantly, and my heart slammed against my ribs. I froze at the door, unable to move or speak, my fingers clutching the tray harder than necessary. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, his gaze, the silence, the way the room seemed to close in on me. I had seen him in his boxers before, but this felt wrong. This was different. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run. But I couldn't. I didn't even know why. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to process what was happening, trying to make sense of it all. My feet refused to move, rooted in place by an overwhelming mix of fear and confusion. My mind raced, but every thought felt jumbled, like I was drowning in them. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Then he broke the silence. "Why are you acting like you don't know what I want?" Chief's voice was low, the words cutting through the air like a blade. His tone wasn't one of confusion or surprise. It was a demand, a command. I wanted to scream, to tell him I didn't understand what he was asking, that this wasn't right, that I should have never been put in this position. But I couldn't. His eyes, those dark eyes, were fixed on me, studying me, waiting for me to respond. And as I stood there, the fear deepened. I could feel my throat tightening as if the air itself had become too thick to breathe. I took a small step backward, the tray trembling in my hands, but he noticed. His eyes sharpened. "Don't try to back out now, Grace. You know exactly what I expect from you. Do you think I'm just helping you and your family out of kindness?" Chief's voice was like a whisper, but there was nothing kind in it. It wasn't a question, it was a threat. "I've done everything for you, given you everything you could have dreamed of. Now it's your turn." I swallowed hard, the cold lump of dread in my stomach making it impossible to keep my composure. This wasn't how I thought this would go. This wasn't the man I'd seen as a father figure. This wasn't the same person who had supported my family. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream for help. But there was nowhere to go. Not here, not now. His words hit harder than the shock I felt. "If you want to stay here," Chief continued, his voice growing colder, "you'll do exactly what I tell you. I can't have you thinking you can walk around acting innocent. You think you're too good for this. You think you're too pure to be in this world." I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to say no. Every word I tried to speak felt wrong. What could I even say to him to make him understand that this wasn't something I wanted, that this wasn't me? Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I clenched my fists around the tray, but my body wouldn't stop shaking. How had it come to this? How had I let myself get here? "I didn't ask for this, Chief," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't." He cut me off with a sharp laugh, one that didn't even sound like a laugh at all. It was cruel. "Oh, but you did, Grace. You've been living in my house, eating my food, taking everything I've given you, and now you want to act innocent." He stood up from the couch, his figure towering over me. "You think you can just live here for free? Is that it? You owe me, Grace. You owe me everything. And if you walk out that door tonight, you'll lose it all. You'll lose your school, your family. You'll have nothing." His words were like a slap, each one stinging with the weight of their truth. He wasn't just threatening me. He was manipulating me, playing on every fear I had. Fear of losing my family. Fear of losing everything I had worked so hard for. I felt small, insignificant, like I was trapped in a game I didn't even know the rules to. My hands went cold as I fought back the tears. What was I supposed to do? His gaze softened for a moment, almost like he was offering me a choice, but the underlying threat was clear. "I'll give you one chance, Grace. One chance to prove your worth, what I've done for you. Don't make me regret it." I stood there, frozen, my mind a blur. I could feel the walls closing in. Was this really happening? Was I really being forced into this? But before I could respond, Chief moved toward me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, his breath warm against my skin. "I'll give you time to think about it. But know this, Grace, you have no other options." His grip tightened ever so slightly, as if to remind me of the power he held over me. And then, without another word, he walked away, leaving me standing in the silence of his living room, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I couldn't stay here much longer, not with him. The days that followed were an endless blur. Each moment with Chief felt like I was walking through a haze, my feet dragging, my mind clouded with guilt and confusion. It wasn't just the fear that clung to me now. It was something far worse, the realization that I couldn't escape him. Chief had been so subtle at first. His demands, his threats, they came in small doses, easy to dismiss at first. But now they were building, slowly, methodically. Every conversation seemed to carry a weight I hadn't noticed before. His voice, once friendly and reassuring, now felt like a trap. "Grace, don't forget," he'd say, his hand casually brushing against my shoulder. "I'm the one who helped you get into school. I'm the one who gave you a place to stay. If you think you can just walk away from that, you're wrong. You'll have nothing. Nothing at all." His words weren't harsh. They didn't need to be. They were calm, almost kind, and yet they carried the weight of 1,000 threats hidden beneath them. I would nod, forcing a smile, trying to push the growing anxiety down deep inside. But every time I did, a little more of me withered. He was right, wasn't he? If I rejected him, if I turned my back on him now, everything I'd worked for, everything my family had hoped for, would disappear. My parents would be devastated. Chief had done so much for us, for me. I owed him, didn't I? I owed him everything. But as I sat in the living room one afternoon, Chief sitting just a few feet away on the couch, the truth gnawed at me. The truth that had been slowly sinking in since that night in the living room. This wasn't kindness. This wasn't help. This was control. His voice broke the silence again, smooth and calculating. "You're such a good girl, Grace. But I know what you're thinking. You think I'm asking too much, right?" He leaned forward, his gaze locked on mine. "But you have to understand. If you want everything to stay the same, you have to be loyal. You don't want to lose what you have, do you?" His words twisted in my gut. Loyalty. To him. To the man who had taken something from me that I hadn't even realized was slipping away until it was almost too late. I felt trapped. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, drowning out the world around me. Everything he said made sense on the surface. It wasn't just manipulation. It was strategic, carefully crafted to make me feel like I was the one at fault. Like I was the one who would be breaking something sacred if I refused him. "I just want what's best for you, Grace." Chief continued, his voice gentle, almost coaxing. "I've always looked out for you. I've always made sure you had a future. Don't you want to keep that future?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air, his eyes searching mine. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Yes," I whispered, the word tasting like poison. "Of course I do." He smiled then, a smile that should have made me feel safe, but it only deepened my unease. "Good. I'm glad we understand each other. Because if you turn your back on me, everything we've built together, everything you've worked for, it'll all come crashing down. And then you'll have no one." The weight of his words pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. I could already feel myself slipping away, the person I used to be, the girl who had dreams of a different life, fading with every word he spoke. The days that followed were even worse. He began to isolate me further, keeping me from my friends, from the few people I had left outside his sphere. "They don't understand you like I do, Grace," he would say, his voice dripping with false concern. "They don't know what you've been through. You need to focus on what's important. Focus on us." I started to believe him. It wasn't difficult. The more he controlled me, the more I began to doubt my own perceptions. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was making things worse than they really were. But the truth was, every time I tried to reach out to someone, I felt more and more alone. I couldn't talk to my parents, not without risking everything they had fought so hard for. I couldn't talk to my friends. They didn't know what was really happening. Chief had made sure of that. He had made sure I couldn't escape, not in any meaningful way. And the worst part, I felt myself slipping into this strange, numb state where I couldn't even trust my own thoughts anymore. I couldn't tell if the person I was becoming was someone I recognized or someone I was forced to be. His control over me was subtle, but it was all-encompassing. It had started with small comments, small gestures, but now it felt like the air I breathed was tainted by his influence. Every moment was filled with dread. Dread of what would happen if I resisted. Dread of what would happen if I left. And yet, part of me was terrified of what would happen if I stayed. I tried to push those thoughts away, but they kept coming back, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I could feel myself unraveling, piece by piece. But the breaking point came that night. I was in the kitchen again, doing dishes, trying to focus on the small, familiar tasks to keep my mind occupied. The house was quiet, save for the sound of the water running and the soft hum of the refrigerator. But then I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting to see Chief standing there, just as I had come to expect in the past few weeks. But this time he didn't speak. He didn't say anything at all. Instead, he just stood there watching me. His gaze was so intense, so piercing, that I felt my skin crawl. "Grace," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, "you can't keep running from me forever. Sooner or later, you'll have to face the truth. This is your life now." And then, before I could even respond, he took a step closer, closing the distance between us. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen next. But I knew one thing for sure. Things were about to change again. The tension in the house had been building all week. Every glance Chief shot my way, every word he uttered, seemed to press down on me like a weight, growing heavier and heavier. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. But that evening was different. I could feel something shifting inside me, something stirring that had been dormant for so long. Maybe it was the anger, or maybe it was the unbearable weight of everything I'd been enduring, but when Chief snapped at me for the smallest mistake, over something as trivial as the placement of a vase on the table, I felt the snap inside me too. "Are you stupid?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence of the room like a blade. "Can't you do anything right?" I flinched. I always did, at least until now. I stood there, staring at the vase on the table, as if it held the answers to everything. His words reverberated in my ears, the same words he had said so many times before. His tone, though, was different today. There was an edge to it that made my chest tighten with dread, and then something broke inside me. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep pretending I was okay with everything. I turned to him, my hands trembling, but something in my chest was solid, fueled by months of abuse, of manipulation, of feeling like I was nothing more than a pawn in his game. "Enough, Chief," I said, my voice barely above a whisper at first. But it was enough to make him pause. His eyes flicked to me, narrowing, as if he were trying to gauge whether I was serious. "Enough." His laugh was low, dismissive. "What do you think you're going to do, huh? Leave? Go tell your parents the truth? You think they'll believe you over me?" He stepped closer, his gaze darkening, his expression turning dangerous. "You think I won't destroy everything you love?" I swallowed hard. My chest was tight, my heart racing, but there was a fire building inside me, a fire that had been smoldering for too long. "I will," I said, my voice steadying with every word. "I'll tell them everything. What you've done. What you're doing to me." My breath caught in my throat as the words came out, louder, more confident than I ever thought I could be. "I won't be your prisoner anymore." The silence between us was suffocating, thick with the threat of something worse. Chief's eyes flared with anger. Without warning, he grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging into my skin like a vice, forcing me to look up at him. I gasped, but he didn't let go. His grip was unyielding, and for a moment I felt like I couldn't breathe. "You think you can walk away from this? From me?" His voice was a low growl, his face twisted with fury. "You think your parents will forgive you for ruining everything I've done for you? You think anyone will believe a liar like you over me?" He was shaking me now, his grip tightening. I struggled to pull away, my heart thudding painfully in my chest, but his hold was too strong. "I will ruin you, Grace. I will destroy everything you've worked for. Your family will never forgive you. You'll be nothing. Do you understand me?" Tears pricked at my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I refused to let him see me cry again. "I don't care," I whispered, my voice trembling, but the determination was there, deep inside. "I'd rather lose everything than stay with you." I pulled my arm away with all the strength I could muster. He staggered back, his expression darkening, his jaw clenched tight in a mask of rage. The air in the room was thick with tension. It felt like the world was holding its breath. The man I had once seen as a protector was now a monster in front of me, his true nature exposed in full force. For a split second, I thought I saw hesitation in his eyes, just a flicker. But then, as if to remind me who he was, he lunged at me again. "Don't you dare walk out that door," he snarled, his voice barely controlled. But I was already moving. Adrenaline surged through my veins, and I bolted toward the front door, my heart in my throat. I didn't think. I didn't care that I didn't have a plan. I just knew I had to leave. I grabbed my bag from the counter, shoving a few essentials inside, clothes, my phone, anything I could grab. As I turned to head out, I heard him behind me, shouting my name, his voice filled with fury and disbelief. "Grace, stop. Don't do this." But I didn't stop. I pushed open the door, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap of reality. My legs felt weak, but I didn't stop running. I didn't even look back. I ran down the street, my chest heaving, my thoughts a chaotic mess. What had I just done? I was terrified, but there was something else, too, something I hadn't felt in months. Freedom. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew I couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. But as I rounded the corner, I felt a shadow fall over me. I heard footsteps behind me, too close, too fast. Panic surged through my body, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Had he followed me? I didn't dare look back. I ran faster, my heart pounding harder with every step, but the footsteps, those familiar, heavy footsteps, were closing in. I couldn't outrun him forever, and I knew in that moment the real fight was only just beginning. I didn't know where I was going when I ran out into that night, my feet pounding the cold pavement beneath me. I didn't know who to turn to, where to find help. The weight of what I'd done hung heavily on me. But for the first time in months, the weight was my burden to carry. I didn't even know how long I'd been running when I stumbled upon the women's shelter. The building stood quietly in the distance, a small beacon of hope. It was nothing fancy, just a simple structure tucked away on a quiet street. But it was exactly what I needed. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt the atmosphere shift. Warmth, kindness, understanding. It was like stepping into a safe haven after years of suffocating darkness. A woman at the front desk greeted me with a gentle smile, as if she had seen my kind 1,000 times before. She didn't ask questions, didn't probe for details. She just handed me a cup of tea and offered me a place to sleep. It was strange, settling into this new life. I wasn't used to being treated like a person again, someone with value, someone worthy of care. I stayed in the shelter for several weeks, hiding from the world, taking long walks to clear my head, processing everything that had happened. I learned, for the first time, that I was allowed to exist without the weight of someone else's demands or manipulations. I could breathe without fear, without the constant worry that my next move would be scrutinized, judged, or punished. But the hardest part wasn't the isolation or the uncertainty of the future. It was the truth I had to face about myself, about Chief, about everything. I had let myself fall into his trap. I had allowed myself to believe that his kindness, his protection, was something I owed him, that I was nothing without his help. It took a long time to untangle that lie, to admit to myself that I wasn't a victim, but someone who had been trapped in a lie I had been too scared to face. And the hardest thing? Letting go of my family. I couldn't risk them knowing the truth. They didn't deserve to carry that burden. Chief had made it clear that if I spoke out, he'd ruin everything. He was a master manipulator, and the last thing I wanted was to drag my parents into that mess. So I cut ties. I made the decision to leave them out of it, to protect them. The guilt ate at me. It still does. Every time I think about my mom and dad, I wonder if they ever knew the truth about why I left so suddenly, so quietly. But deep down, I know it was the right thing. I couldn't let them fall victim to him, too. Not when I had the chance to escape. I spent months alone, trying to find the strength to heal. I worked odd jobs, saved what I could. The money was never much, but it didn't matter. I was building something for myself. For the first time, it was mine. One evening, after a particularly hard day at work, I sat in the small room I'd rented, staring at the cracked mirror above the sink. The reflection staring back at me was someone I didn't fully recognize, someone bruised, someone broken, but someone who had found the courage to stand up and leave. And I realized, for the first time in a long while, that I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been afraid of what people would think, afraid of what would happen if I spoke out, afraid of losing everything. But now I had nothing to lose but my own fear. I smiled, a genuine smile, one that reached my eyes. The woman staring back at me wasn't the girl I used to be, the one who had been trapped by guilt, shame, and manipulation. No, this was someone different, someone stronger. I wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear. I was never going to let anyone control me again. The road to recovery wasn't going to be easy. I knew there would be days when I'd feel overwhelmed, when I'd question myself, when I'd wonder if I made the right choice. But I also knew that no matter what, I had the strength to keep going. And as I stepped outside that night, the cool air a reminder of how far I'd come, I took a deep breath and smiled. Because for the first time I felt free. I was free. The future was mine to shape, and I would shape it on my own terms.